Okay, this is recording. If you have a bad connection, you may go and just watch the video later. So the update was I'm not taking attendance because there is not really a way to take attendance in the big classroom as of right now. I will let you know if we ever do take attendance. This is a review day, so I'm going to go over the last two examples from example 9, and then I'm going to go over the exam review that I posted very early this morning. Okay. Interrupt me if you have questions. Interrupt me if you have my math lab questions. Interrupt me if you have questions about the quiz, about how the exam is going to work on Monday. Feel free to interrupt me. Make sure you're in an intermediate algebra class and not college algebra, please. So we were just simplifying by combining like terms, and then we also practiced the distributive property. So these last two combine both the distributive property and combining like terms to simplify something. All right. So what we have here is 7x squared plus 3 minus 5 times the quantity x squared minus 4. So what that means is I need to distribute the 5 to the x squared and to the negative 4. Okay. And I need to note that it is a negative 5. So I shouldn't have said distribute 5. I should have said distribute negative 5. So this is 7x squared plus 3. And then I'm going to take that negative 5 and multiply it times x squared. So that's just minus 5x squared. And then the negative 5 times the negative 4 is a positive 20, right? Because 5 times 4 is a 20, and a negative times a positive, sorry, a negative times a negative becomes a positive. Now you put them in kind of either alphabetical order if you have a bunch of letters, or exponentially decreasing order. Okay, so I'm going to put 7x squared minus 5x squared up front, and then I just have a 3 and a 20. Note that I kept the sign with the number that's behind it. So it's a positive 7, a positive 3, a negative 5x squared, and a positive 20. Okay, and now I can just combine the two different groups of like terms. So these are alike, and these are alike, right? And after I do that, I will be done. That's as simplified as it can be. So here we're just taking 7 and subtracting 5. You leave the x squared. So how many x squareds do I have if I used to have 7 and I took away 5? 7 minus 5 is 2. And then for the 3 plus 20, it's 23. So that's my final simplified answer. This one's a little bit more difficult, and we wrote on it because I just did a tiny example right before we left, but I will rewrite it down here. So we have 1/2 of 4a minus 6b minus 1/3 of 9a plus 12b minus 1 plus 1/4. I clearly need more room than I gave myself. Okay, so the main question that would come up right now is what do you do about fractions, right? When you have to use the distributive property and you're distributing a fraction, right? Well, we did review how to multiply fractions. So I'm just going to take that 1/2 and I'm going to multiply 1/2 by 4a, and I'm going to multiply 1/2 by negative 6b, right? So just like I distributed the 5, the negative 5 here, I'm going to distribute the 1/2. So 1/2 times 4a. And just like here, you put the numbers together. So negative 5 times negative 4, but there was no number here, or there was only a 1. So you just keep it the negative 5 and the x squared. So here you're kind of, if it had a's, we would combine a's, but you're really just thinking about 1/2 and the 4, and then you're adding the a later, right? How do you multiply 1/2 and 4 together? If you remember how to multiply a fraction, you can multiply it as fractions, which is just straight across, right? But how do you turn 4 into a fraction? Remember, any number divided by 1 is that same number. So I can turn anything into a fraction by just adding a division bar and a 1 below it, okay? So now I can essentially just multiply straight across. So 1/2 times 4/1 becomes 4 times 1 is 4, 2 times 1 is 2, and I bring that a, okay? 4 divided by 2, remember that is always a division bar, is actually just 2. So that becomes 2a. Is that all right? Okay, and then we have 1/2 times -6b, right? I made parentheses because I wanted the negative to be included and it's multiplication. So I could have put the b inside. Doesn't matter. The b could be inside or outside. So again, if I want to turn that into a fraction, I just put it over 1. So we have 1/2 times -6/1. I can put the negative with the 6 or with the 1, it doesn't matter. So 1 times -6 is a -6. 2 times 1 is 2, right? Or I could have said +6 over -2, either one. It equals -6/2, right? And again, we can divide. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so it's actually a -3. And then I just bring that b back. So 1/2 of 4a is 2a. 1/2 of -6b is -3b. So that becomes 2a minus 3b. Good. The next part of the equation was -1/3 times the quantity 9a plus 12b minus 1 minus 1. Good. So 1/3 -1/3 times 9/1 is, so that first one, I turn 9 into a fraction by putting it over 1. -1 times 9 is a -9. 3 times 1 is 3. -9 divided by 3, -9/3. 9 divided by 3 is a -3, right? Bring that a back. Now I have -1/3 times +12. Turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. If you are ever having technical issues, you can feel free to leave and come back. I don't know. Leave and like come back into the classroom, you might be able to hear, or definitely let me know if you can't hear, because if nobody can hear, that's a problem. And if it doesn't work, I'm recording this and you can watch the recording later, okay? You'll never be, that won't ever be worse than coming to class to watch the video later, okay? So, oh, and you can't hear me, so I need to write that down. All right. So -1/3 times 12/1. -1 times the +12 is a -12. 3 times 1 is 3. Or you could say 12 over -3, right? I just want to keep reiterating. It doesn't matter which one you put the negative with, just that it's with 1. Okay. So -12/3. Sorry, I rewrote it so that it would be in the middle. -12/3. 12 divided by 3 is a 4, right? So that's actually -4. And that had a b with it originally. So it's -4b. And then -1/3 times -1. -1/1 to turn it into a fraction. -1 times -1 becomes a +1. 3/1 is 3. So that's just 1/3. Good. So now we combine those. So this becomes, sorry, I wrote it so big you can't see it all. This becomes -3a minus 4b plus 1/3, right? Because that didn't have a negative with it, so we just add it. Now I need to combine both of these. Sorry, both of these. 2a minus 3b minus 3a minus 4b plus 1/3. Any questions? Any questions? All right. So now we're just going back to putting it in. This is what I mean by alphabetical order. Put the A's first and then put the B's. So we have 2A minus 3A minus 3B minus 4B plus 1/3. It's at the end because it's the constant, or it doesn't have any variable, right? Now I can combine those like terms. These two would go together. These two would go together. So 2A minus 3A just gives me a negative 1A or a negative A. Negative 3B minus 4B, those are the same term, right? They're both negative, so we combine them, we get 7B, and they're both negative, so I'm going to subtract 7B plus 1/3 because it was not combined with anything. So that is as simple as you can make that expression, okay? And as you'll see as we go through the practice exam, there's not going to be anything that complicated on the exam. The exam is multiple choice. Any questions about those two problems? All right, let's move on to the exam. Again, if you want to, you can try to do this now without me and then watch the video later or check the answer key, because it's going to be more effective for you to try to do it without watching me do it. But you guys are also really good at catching my mistakes, so maybe do it, but assume that I'm doing it wrong, right? Maybe that's a way to do it. So just as you're working it, I would also have a note card ready, and then you can write down on the note card any information that you found that you needed. So find 10x plus y when x is 7 and y is 8. So that just means what I do first before I substitute those in is I put parentheses around the variables. So 10 is being multiplied by x plus y. Okay, that's just a safety measure. So now I have 10 times 7 plus 8. So now I know that it's not 107, right? I know it's 10 times 7, which is 70 plus 8. So that is 78. Good question. So somebody asked, do we have to show work on all our problems? No. Only worry about showing work if you're not allowed to go on to the next question because it's asked you to show work. If you want to, if it's easier for you to give me your entire exam, that's fine, but I'm only going to look at the work if the question says, please show your work, okay? You do not need to email me anything unless you see a question on the exam that says show your work and you did not put in your work into that little box, okay? I don't want to see your work for all of it. Well, I'm happy to, but you don't need to worry about me looking at your work for all of it. An aircraft costs $2,956 per hour to operate. 2956T gives the total cost to operate the aircraft for T hours. So T is probably time, right? Find the total cost to operate the aircraft for 1.6 hours. So 1.6 is our time. Our equation is 2956. And remember, I like to put the variable in parentheses if I know I have to substitute it. And the T is actually 6.1. So it's 2956 times 6.1. And that's all we're doing, okay? Once you multiply that, and you manage to not type anything in incorrectly, you're done. So it's $18,000 approximately. And 0.6, but since we're talking about dollars, you can call it 60 cents, okay? Simplify your answer. I don't know why. The only thing that could mean is they're just asking you not to just leave it like this. Do the multiplication and give them the whole answer. You will not be showing your work on many questions. I just want to make sure no one's cheating. I want to make sure you know the math, but I'm not gonna I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time, but I do want to make it fair and make sure nobody's using outside resources or just coming up with the answer, right? Good question. It's not the majority of questions. List the elements in the set X such that X is a natural number less than -3. So less than -3 and the natural numbers. The natural numbers are all the negatives, 0, and all the positives, but no fractions or decimals, okay? There will be one, so basically this is a one-to-one exam. There's going to be a question like this. There's going to be a question like this. There's going to be a question like this. Good? So if you still are not sure about natural numbers, whole numbers, and integers, you could add that to your note card, okay? So a natural number less than -3. So if it's less than -3, it's going to start at less than, right? If I make the symbol for less than, I think on the number line, here's -3 and it's less than. X is less than -3. So that means on my number line, I'm going that way. Okay. What's that way? What's less than -3? Would this be a -2 or a -4?
-4. That way
Very
it always goes higher.
Yes. Excellent. All right. So -4 is actually my first number on this side, right? And it should, this is obviously here to confuse you, but it should always be moving from least to greatest in an array like this, okay, if you're making a list. So -4, this number can only be less than -4, okay? And it's all the numbers less than -3, so here is where we have to put continuing. It's continuing in that direction forever, right? So that matches with C. It can't be A just because it's written wrong, okay? It's the same numbers, but you always want to be writing, this should be the smallest number, just like a number line, and this should be your biggest number in your list, okay? So that's why that can't be. It's the right numbers, but you don't have them from smallest to largest. Here, these are all greater than -3, right? So it's not that one. It is this one, and this one just means there's no solution. So the O with the line through it just means no solution, so none of these. 4 asks for the absolute value of -8. Remember, absolute value is the distance to 0. Okay, so everything is inside the absolute value bars. Between -8 and 0, there are 8 units, okay? Here, this one's a little bit more confusing. So we have a negative absolute value of -5. So first, the absolute value of -5, what is that? That's 5. How far is it from 0? It's 5. So just this part becomes a +5, but we have to carry that negative sign. So it's meant to confuse you, but the answer is actually -5 because that is outside the absolute value bars. The absolute value of -5 is 5, but then we carry the negative sign. Here's something I would definitely put on a note card because it's so confusing and annoying. More than or less than, switch the numbers. Ah, I can't even spell. Switch the numbers. Okay. More than or less than, switch the numbers. So I found more than. That means I switched the 8 and the 3. Okay. Also, this isn't just 3, this is the whole phrase 3 times the number. So if this wasn't more than, right, I could say 8. If this was just the product of 8 and 3 times a number, then I can go like this, right? But because it's more than or less than, we switch the order. So now it's whatever this is goes here, and the 8 goes here. And we know that more than means plus, okay? So more than or less than, switch the numbers. 3 times a number. Use X to represent a number. 3, and what is times? It's multiplication, right? So we can say 3 times X or just 3X. So I would choose D. We wouldn't choose A because it's not 3 times 8 more than a number. It's just 3 times the number. Good. It's not 8 times the number. It's not 11 times the number. It's 3 times the number. And then 8 more. So that's why I would choose D. Number 7 is just adding. -2 plus 12. Another way to look at it is 12 minus 2, right? 12 minus 2 is 10. So anytime you have different signs, you can subtract them, and then the answer should have the same sign as the bigger number. 5 minus 20. You can also say that's 20 minus 5 is 15, right? But here, the bigger number was positive, so our answer is positive. Here, our bigger number, the 20, is negative, so it's a negative 15. You're also welcome to put it in your calculator, right? 5 minus 20, or just in your brain, it comes to you, right? I'm not going to ask you to show work for something like that. 5 minus 20 is negative 15. Oh. Okay. On the exam, there's usually 25 questions approximately. And there's more on this review. I apologize. I just want to not surprise you with anything. So I'm repeating some stuff. The review has more, but the exam has, let me look. The exam has between 20 and 30, I think. There's no time limit on the exam. Take as long as you want. -7 and -2. If they're both the same sign, you just add them. 7 and 2 is 9, but they were both negative, so it's a -9. Or -7 minus 2, right? This is -7 on the number line. Go 2 down and you get to -9. However you want to do it. Put it in your calculator, whatever. Good. So we added them because they were the same sign, but then we made sure that the answer used that same sign. Subtract 28 minus 12 minus 20. So you can do it all in your calculator at once, or you can say, what is 28 minus 12? 8 minus 2 is 6. 2 minus 1 is 1. So 28 minus 12 is 16. And then we're going to subtract 20 from 16. That gets difficult, right? I don't know how to subtract like that, but 16 minus 20 is what I have now. So I can reverse it and say 20 minus 16 is 4, and that my bigger number had a negative sign. Or again, you can put it all in your calculator. But this is not going to work. Just your standard subtraction is not going to work if you're subtracting a number that's bigger than your top number. You're going to need to flip them and then just make your answer negative. Find the product. Product always means multiply, but you'll be able to see as well that it's a multiplication problem. So they're asking us to multiply -2 times -3 times -8. So if I'm not just going to put this in my calculator, I want to think about if I multiply 2 negatives, I'll get a positive, right? If I multiply them together, I'll have a positive. And then a positive times a negative is going to be a negative. So I just want to be thinking, okay, this is 3 negative numbers. My answer must be negative. Okay. If it was 2 negatives, my answer would have to be positive. If it was a negative and a positive, my answer would have to be negative, right? But 2 negatives make a positive, and then that positive and that negative make a negative. So -2 times -3 is -6, and I should definitely be using parentheses. I apologize. -6 times -8 is what? 48. And because, oh, sorry, it was +6. We just went over. This is why you have to do it like that. Because it's a positive times a negative, it's a negative 48. Undefined is only going to be if you are dividing something by 0. Okay, so if the answer you got was negative 48 over 0, you cannot divide by 0. It is undefined. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that choice. And they're all multiple choice anyway. Divide negative 35 by 5. So again, I would just think I'm taking a negative number and I'm dividing it by a positive number. So my answer is going to be negative. Okay. And then just think of how many times does 5 go into 35? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 7. Or put it in your calculator. It's always a good idea to use parentheses, but sometimes it doesn't matter. All right. Sorry, that's negative 7. 0 divided by negative 2. So this is a good time to know what undefined looks like, or what is undefined and what is not. So 0 divided by 2 is just going to equal 0, but 2 divided by 0 is
That's a
undefined.
-2.
Yes, sorry, my example. Oh, thanks, guys. My example problem is, I was trying to save time, sorry. But I thank you. Oh my gosh, I make so many mistakes. So on my, if I was still confused about undefined, I would make 2 different examples and say, this is not undefined, but this will always be undefined. Good? And you can, your calculator literally won't work. So 0 divided by negative 2 is okay, but negative 2 divided by 0, sorry, will never work. So if the 0 is on top and not on the bottom, it's okay. But if it's on the bottom, it's not going to work. Even if it's 0 divided by 0, it still won't work. Okay. Nothing divided by 0 will ever work. So it is not undefined, right? It's just 0. Negative 9 squared. All right, let's review the different ways to get this. Negative 9 squared means we're doing this. Good. This means we're doing this. And trickily enough, this means we're doing just a giant parentheses of negative 9 times 9. I know that was on one of the quizzes and it was a terrible question. Okay, so unless there are parentheses exactly after the 2 and covering the negative, you treat those as positives. So negative 9 times 9 is a negative 81. Same numbers, but now we have a negative times a negative, so that's a positive 81. It's all in parentheses, so that does not mean, that is not the same as, negative 9 squared in parentheses is not equal to negative 9 with the 2 outside of the parentheses. Okay, so that is still negative 81. Everybody okay with that? So because there's no parentheses around the negative sign, we're going to call this a negative 81. If there's no parentheses, the 2 only goes with the number. But here, it's just like the distributive property. So we're distributing the 2, the whole number. It's now a negative 9. All right, negative 3 halves. So that is including the negative sign. So negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. I need to start going way faster. 169. So even if you don't have a button like this on your calculator that will give you your answer, you can just say 2 times 2 is 4, so 4 is a perfect square. 3 times 3 is, so 9 is a perfect square. All the way up to 10 times 10. So I'm looking for 169. 11 times 11, 12 times 12, 13 times 13. So that is 13 times 13. So that means the square root of 169 is 13. This was also on a quiz, very difficult. So what you can do here is the square root of 36 over the square root of 121. So the square root of 36 is 6 because 6 times 6 is 36. So I still have that negative 6 on the top. Sorry. The square root of 121, like we saw, is 11. So it's negative 6 11ths. The cubed root means I'm taking a number and I'm multiplying it by itself 3 times instead of 2 times. So that's 3. For example, the cubed root of 8 is 2 because 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Good. There's not going to be any cubed root or fourth root on the exam. I just want you to, I want to make sure that this is clear as early as possible. So the fourth root of 625. So maybe I'll say, what's 5 times itself 4 times 625? So that means there are 4 5s under here. And because there's 4 of them, 5 times 5 times 5 is 625. So the fourth root of 625 is 5. You can never take the root of a negative number, so this is not a real number. If you put it into your calculator, it will not work. It's not real. If it was a third root, that would be okay. But there's no 2 numbers you could multiply together to get a negative, so that's why it's not a real number. Simplify, I just want you to make sure you understand how to do, what order to do this in. So remember, this is like a grouping symbol. So we have 0, there will not be decimals. But just so you know how to do it. Just look at this, solve all of this on top, and then put it over what's on the bottom. 0.1 minus negative 1.4. It's positive 1.5 because subtracting a negative is a positive. So it's 0.1 plus 1.4, which is 1.5 divided by negative 0.5. So that becomes 1.5 over negative 0.5 or negative 1.5 over 0.5. And oddly enough, you can divide 1.5 divided by 0.5 and you get 3. There are 3 1/2 in 1.5, but it was negative. Good. All right. Here again, just work from the most in the the smallest parentheses. -4 plus 3 becomes -1, right? So now I have 4 times -3 plus 3 times 3 minus 2 times -1. Now the innermost parentheses is 3 minus 2 times -1. These are being multiplied and we multiply before we add, right? So if you're thinking about PEMDAS, we multiply the 2 and the -1 before we subtract. So that becomes 4 times -3 plus 3 parentheses 3. -2 times -1 becomes a +2. Let me know when I do something wrong. It's inevitable. Now, those are the smallest parentheses, so that becomes 5, right? 3 plus 2 is 5. We still have to multiply that by 3. And then everything by 4. Good? 3 times 5 becomes 15. Again, there's a negative number and a positive number. You're combining them. So 15 minus 3 is 12. And the 15 is a positive number, so it's a positive 12. So we're just going to multiply 12 times 4. $48. Oh, all right. Skip number 23. I thought those were parentheses, but they're absolute values. Do not worry, you will not see anything like that on the exam. I wanted to practice parentheses, but those are absolute values. 5 cubed minus 2 squared plus 2 cubed minus 5 squared. What I want you to know is to do the exponents first, okay? Do the exponents first. Here you would do parentheses first and then do the exponents before you multiply, okay? So 5 to the third is the same as saying 5 times 5 times 5. So that's 125. Minus 2 times 2 is 4. Plus 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Minus 5 times 5 is 25. Good. And then you can just put that all in your calculator. 125 minus 4 is 121. Plus 8 minus 25. 129 minus 25 looks like it's only close to like 104, right? And remember, it's all multiple choice. I know this one's not multiple choice, but that's just to make sure you feel super prepared. Okay. 11 minus 13 is what we have to do first because it's in parentheses. So we have -2. So now that's 5 times -2 raised to the 4th. Keep it in parentheses, very important. -2 to the 4th, because if it wasn't, you'd get the wrong answer, right? -2 to the 4th is 16. 16 times 5 is 80. Asks us to evaluate the expression when y is -2. Remember, I put it in parentheses before I switch it to a -2. -2 squared is 4. So that's -9 times 4. -36. All right, 27. Evaluate the expression when x is 4 and y is -5. So we have the square root of 4 over -5 minus -5 over 4. Good. The square root of 4 is 2 because 2 times 2 is 4. So we have -2/5 minus -5/4, right? Or -2/5 plus 5/4. Now we need a common denominator. So I'm going to take the 5 and multiply it by 4. Take the 4 and multiply it by 5. So we have 4 times 2 becomes 8. 4 times 5 becomes 20. Ooh, and it was a negative. Always forget those. Plus 5 times 5 is 25. And 4 times 5 is 20. So now I have a common denominator. 8 plus 25 is 33. So I would say it's 33 over 20. Nope, negative 8. So 25 minus 8. 25 minus 8 will give me 17, so it's 17 over 20. You can type a whole number or a fraction, but again, it's multiple choice, so don't worry about it. We're not going to have anything as difficult as 28 either. Sorry, I'm running out of time. All right. Insert less than, greater than, or equal to between the pairs of numbers. So negative 11 and negative 17. I strongly encourage you to put a number line out and just roughly think, if negative 11 is here, is 17 closer to 0 or negative 17 is further from 0? It's further from 0, right? So that means 11 is, this is the greater than side, this is the less than side. Negative 11 is greater than negative 17. Or you might just know it, right? Okay, this is important. Make sure you know what a reciprocal is and what an opposite is. I know I have literally like 3 minutes. All right. So the reciprocal of, I'll just make it, all right, negative 1/8 is negative 8 over 1. So it's not a sign change, okay? But the additive opposite of negative 1/8 is positive 1/8, okay? Make sure you know the difference between reciprocal and opposite. Reciprocal is a multiplicative opposite, but it won't. Come on. All right, I'll make a tiny video. Let's see how much time we have. All right, so negative 1/8, the opposite of negative 1/8 is just a positive 1/8. The reciprocal of negative 1/8 will stay a negative, but we'll flip it, negative 8 over 1 or negative 8, right? That's the same. Negative 8 over 1 is negative 8. Oh, yeah, I thought they were gonna give us a different number, but they just made it a big question. So that's 1/8, and that is negative 8. Find the opposite of the number. The opposite is just going to be negative 8 over 7. Don't flip anything, okay? I am going to finish this just because I'm recording it, but if you do have to go, you're welcome to go. Don't worry. Right, the reciprocal of the number 19, and I need to flip it, right? The reciprocal means I take whatever's on the top of the fraction and I put it on the bottom of the fraction. This isn't a fraction. So what I do first is I make it a fraction. And then I flip it. So it's not B because we don't change the sign, we just flip it. It's not C because we don't change the sign. And then the last few examples are just the distributive property. 4 times the quantity x plus 10 means I'm going to multiply 4 times x and 4 times 10, which is 40. Here, make sure you're using a negative 3 to distribute. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times a negative 2y. Negative 3 times a negative 2 is a positive 6. Now I have a y. And then negative 3 times a positive 6 is 18. And it's negative. Because a negative times positive will be a negative. All right, simplify the following expression. This one's a hard one. First, distribute that minus sign. So we have 4 minus 2y, but now I need to multiply the 4 times the negative 1. So I get a negative 4. And I am to multiply the 11y times the -1, so I get minus 11y. Then I put it in order. So that becomes -2y minus 11y plus 4 minus 4. Good, all in order. -2 minus 11, combine them, you get 13, but they were both negative. 4 minus 4 is 0. So our answer is -13y. 36, we're going to distribute the 4 to these two, and then we're going to distribute the 8 to these two. So 4 times 2 is 8z to the third. 4 times a -6, right? What's 4 times 6? 24, but it's a negative. Plus, so 8 times 3, also 24. And then 8 times a -z to the third is just -8 z to the third. Hilarious joke, because those all cancel out, right? So we have 8z to the third minus 8z to the third minus 24 plus 24. Those make it 0. These become 0. So our answer is just 0. Last question, guys. 9n plus 2 times 3 is 6n. 2 times a -6 is a -12 minus 2. So the 3n minus 6 became a 6n minus 12. 9 and 6 is 15. -12 minus 2 is -14. Right. That's your review. Email me if you have questions. I'm going to stop recording.